Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We'll be getting started here in about 2 minutes.
I love seeing where everyone's from. We got North Carolina, New York representing, Toronto. All right. Northern California, Virginia, Austin. I'm up in Dallas. Got some Atlanta, more Toronto. All right. More Virginia. A lot of Toronto. Okay. Our territory manager for Canada is up in Toronto, Irfan. If you've not met him, he's a great guy. Calgary. All right. Lots of Canadians. How's the weather? Minnesota. Love Minnesota. Been there quite a bit. Oh, Chuck. Good to see you. Nashville. Love me some Nashville. Florida. We're at in Florida. Sarasota. Very nice. My sister lives on Sanibel. Calgary. The Texas of Canada. Oh, Jody. Good to see you. Tucson. Love me some Tucson, Arizona.
All righty. I think we can go ahead and get us kicked off. You said good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Bell. It's not Critical Start Events like it says on here. I'm a channel and field marketing manager here at Critical Start. So thank you all for joining our final virtual event of the year, the State of Cybersecurity 2023 Trends and 2024 Predictions. Now, before we get started with the content, I quickly want to review a few housekeeping items. We can go to the next slide. This session is being recorded, and you will receive this recording about 24 hours post-event, so you'll get that tomorrow morning. We will be also using the poll functionality throughout this event. You'll find the poll, the chat, the Q&A section, all in the right-hand function panel of Goldcast here. So you're already using the chat, which is great. Polls are just right up there as well. So again, let's keep this chat going. We want to make this as engaging as possible, so feel free to submit questions, comments, or thoughts in the chat. And you guys are all automatically muted. If you'd like to speak up and join our speakers on stage, you can raise your hand and we can do that. If not, feel free to put questions in the chat or in the Q&A function, and we'll monitor those to make sure we're getting all of those answered. Now we can go to the next slide. We are going to be doing some fun kind of holiday raffles during our event today. As you can see here, we've got some good ones. We'll be giving off a Solo Stove, a Sonos Roam speaker, a whiskey decanter, and a couple $500 Amazon gift cards to help with your holiday shopping. We'll be selecting our winners from the chat. So all of you guys are really active there already. That's great. Let's keep that up. That's where we'll be pulling our winners from. And you can also get additional entries if you interact with our poll questions. So we'll be doing, I think, 7 polls throughout the event. So keep an eye out for those and make sure to submit your thoughts and answers there. I have a team in the background who's going to be monitoring the chat and the polls, and we'll be selecting these winners at random and announcing them in the chat throughout the event. So keep an eye on the chat there to see if you win. We'll be contacting our winners after the event. So you'll be getting an email from me. So again, my name's Rebecca Bell. Keep an eye out for that name if you win, to get your shipping address to get those raffle prizes shipped out to you. Now that's all of our housekeeping today. We'll get to the good stuff. I'm going to hand it over to our speakers. We have Randy Watkins, CTO, and Sarah Jones, Cyber Threat Intelligence Analyst, both here from Critical Start, taking it over today. So Randy, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks a lot, Critical Start Events. Just kidding. Thanks, Rebecca. My name's Randy Watkins. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Critical Start. I've been here for about 12 years. I kind of do everything from technical strategy to partner alignment. And my favorite thing to do is continue to work with customers out in the field. Sarah, quick intro.
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Jones. I've been with Critical Start for almost 1.5 years now, and I have an extensive background in intel, primarily military intelligence. I've switched to the cyber side for the last 3 years of my 15-year intel career. So I'm really enjoying it, and I primarily help with our clients and informing them on the trends and analysis of new cyber threat actors and what's going on with malware and how to protect their systems long-term and build out detections.
Excellent. Now, our threat intel webinars are always pretty well attended, so we'll get into the information in just a minute. But first, we're going to start off right out of the gate with our first poll question. The first poll question: what is your favorite winter activity? Sarah, what's yours?
Mine is going tubing, but I like to do the tubing where it's a chain link you back all the way to the top so you don't have to walk to the top of the hill again.
Yep, the lazy man snow toe. Yep.
Oh, yes.
Originally from Michigan, I love sledding as well. Now down in Texas, my favorite winter activity is barbecuing. Hockey, skiing, holiday decorating. Sure. $500 worth of coffee on Amazon. Yeah, maybe. Skating, snowboarding. Wish it would snow in Texas. Nope, I do not wish it would snow. It snowed a couple of years ago, and it was a nightmare. I don't remember if anybody remembers Snowmageddon, but yeah, it was not enjoyable. Dallas is just not set up for the snow. We don't have the plows and such. All right, let's dig in. We'll identify a winner here shortly, and as soon as we do, we'll announce it. But let's dig into the content. Yep, this first one's for a $500 raffle card. I'll let you guys know when it comes up. Now, the first topic that we're going to go through is the rise of the cyber criminal. Now, from a just an overarching standpoint, the cyber criminals have been on the rise for the last decade. I mean, we've seen a number of different technology enhancements. We've seen newer TTPs. We've seen faster operationalization of 0 days or vulnerabilities into exploits. So, Sarah, what did we see in 2023, and what are we expecting in 2024 in terms of evolution of cyber criminals?
Yeah, so what we've been noting in 2023 so far is that a lot of the cyber criminal groups are actually trending to use APT tactics. So previously, it was very much the least amount of effort with the widest, broadest focus of who they could target and try to manipulate for exfiltration of sensitive data or even just gaining credentials to make financial gains. Cyber criminals, now that they have been working in the field for over a decade now and really honing in their skills, they have evolved as well. So they're becoming more sophisticated in their attack patterns. They're looking at how to exfiltrate sensitive data more effectively without being detected. One of the things that has really been happening in the cyber career field or in the cyber criminal realm is that governments have been focusing on tactics, identifying them and shutting them down as quickly as possible. So the new goal of the cyber criminal is to be undetected. And one of the ways they can do that is if they adapt to these APT technique styles. So some of the APTs that we're seeing cyber criminals expand into is extended campaigns. So they are more focused on those long-term campaigns in order to get a establishment within a company as far as vulnerability goes or initial access entry. And then they're looking to get as much information as they can in order to sell that any way they can. So whether that's going to be credentials, whether that's going to be the use of ransomware, just a backdoor entry that they can sell to another cyber criminal group that's interested in the industry. They're also looking at using spear phishing. We've seen an increase in spear phishing techniques with cyber criminals. And we have noted that with ChatGPT and AI in general, with Bard as well, those spear phishing campaigns are getting more and more legitimate looking. So it's being harder to detect. 0-day exploits as well as an attack pattern that APT groups traditionally use. So typically cyber criminals aren't exactly known for being like the brightest or best with the skill sets. We're seeing that they are, willing to pay some more money in order to get code or exploit academic papers of coding that's been noted for vulnerabilities on GitHub. So they're taking those resources and they're really maximizing them in order to get early entryway with the 0-day vulnerabilities and exploit a company and organization. So they are really advancing their skill set and honing in their capabilities.
Now, Sarah, you talk about how they're adopting APT-style tactics, really dragging out the length of their campaign. Does that change their goal? I mean, we typically think of cyber criminals as being very monetarily oriented. Are they still going after that, or is it more destruction, extortion? Where are we seeing the bulk of the focus from cyber criminals?
Yeah, so for cyber criminals, we're mainly seeing the bulk of it is still kind of financial. Also, what we've seen is some political motivation with it, with some of the conflict. Cyber criminal groups, not necessarily that they're aligning with a side politically, but they're taking advantage of the conflicted cyber domain landscape in order to practice their skill set as a whole and hone it. So it's not that they're taking a political stance, it's just that they're exploiting it however they can in order to gain financial gain, training experience, um, how to use a new malware, or even work with a new group. So one of the things that we've noticed as well is a heightened collaboration
Mhm.
within the organizations. So that collaboration has really kind of sparked from the darknet markets and then has just increased. So the darknet markets are largely these cyber criminals coming together and talking about, the common industries that have been attacked or vulnerabilities to utilize, top malware to utilize that's not well detected in another industry. And so they're starting to collaborate within these forums in order to help each other out. And we noted in 2023 as three different groups that have been specifically collaborating on TTPs, where their forensics and attacks actually almost look identical. So we've seen Hive, Royal, and Black Basta. All of them used the same granular similarities on their attacks with a 0 0.7Z payload system and executing their commands, and how they were structured. They all use the same credentials. So username and password that they were able to get off of the dark net in order to conduct their attack. We saw this with Fin7 and ex-Conti hackers as well. They're all using a new domino malware that they are spreading through Cobalt Strike. Sorry. And it's an info stealer malware. So essentially, they're trying to scrape for as much information as they can with credentials, password, leaked creds, and establish a backdoor. Rashida Ransomware and Vice Society is another two different groups that we've seen collaborating. And 8base, Ransom House, and Phobos are another set of cyber criminals that have collaborated. What's really interesting is that Rashida Ransomware and 8base are actually new cyber criminals within the landscape for 2023, and they account for 25% of the ransomware attacks that have been happening. So that goes back to where traditionally we've seen cyber criminals, when they're entering the field, it's a very slow spin up process for them getting established, learning what malware they want to use, how to remain undetected in a system, and then what organizations they're going after are typically very minimal, small businesses at first as they gain their confidence and reputation. Well, Rashida Ransomware and 8base are turning that on their head due to the collaboration. They've already got insight into how to conduct the attacks with certain industries and the best initial access points, sharing of credentials. It's really increasing the ability for them to rapidly conduct their cyber attacks in an effective manner. So it's very concerning.
A couple of quick questions from the chat in relation to the topic. So
Right.
Charles says Vice Society is very active in higher ed. Are there any other verticals that are getting targeted by some of these criminal groups? I mean, I know higher ed gets hit and healthcare gets hit quite a bit. Are you seeing criminals go after any other verticals targeted?
Yes, so utilities and hospitals are actually very high risk right now. Banks, telecommunications, technology, chemical, and energy, and the transportation sector are also at high risk. Education has been a very interesting target overall. We continue to see around the beginning of the year, as well as around the holiday timeframe of the year, the education sector being hit, and that's due to taking advantage of the startup with all the new entries, getting the systems back on board, IT infrastructure, starting to do those updates as the school year starts, enrollment processes. A lot more information is flowing into the data sets for education sector during that time with the semester changes. So cyber criminals tried to take advantage and be and they're likely to be less detected at that time due to the massive flow of information coordinating with command and control structures and the entries of the students or faculty or parents registering. So it leaves their account information and data in general more susceptible during those times.
The other question comes from Mario, and it looks like there's a bit of interest around this one. Are you seeing one geopolitical area taking precedence over others?
Oh, well, this is a good question. We are going to talk about some geopolitical stuff later. As far as one taking a preference over the other, I would say they're both being exploited equally at this time. While Russia and Ukraine has been around for a while, we are still actively seeing cyber attacks happening and also new trends coming out of that. And then with Israel and Hamas conflict right now, cyber threat actors are actively exploiting it as well. So not that one is taking precedence over another. I would say different types of actors are taking advantage over one aspect over another. So like more of the sustained long-term APT groups or threat actors are utilizing Ukraine-Russia's side, where new cyber criminals are kind of using Israel and Hamas side to really make their presence known.
Yeah, and that's nothing new. Cyber criminals have always used whatever's relevant today to their advantage, either as a cloak to hide behind or as a hook to get people to click on their emails. I mean, it happened with COVID, happens every year around tax season. It happens every year around this season. Hey, your grandma sent you $50 in an e-card. Like, grandma doesn't know how to send e-cards. So we always see cyber criminals hiding behind whatever's happening in the world, and two wars going on at the same time certainly presents a little bit of a distraction to hide behind. Last question on this one real quick from Terry, asking, how does Critical Start keep on top of all this? So Sarah, what are you doing in the background to identify all of this information and all of these patterns and TTPs?
Oh, that's a great question. So Critical Start in general, we monitor the dark web ourselves. We have some great resources available to us where we are scraping information to understand, what threat actors are currently doing, how they're active, what malware they're using. And we are taking that information and we are parsing it out where we have the ability to do some reverse engineering even. And we are building detections for our platform. So if we have clients who are integrated with our platform, they get access to these detections. And those detections are filtered through our SOC and implemented, and then we are actively monitoring for those. So it really helps our ability to detect rapidly before it's even employed effectively on a client system so that we can stop that employment process of malware. In fact, our team as a whole for Critical Start, Dark Pink is a new malware that has really been pushed to the forefront of use and complications of how it's being deployed. We recently detected 3 different instances of that, where 2 instances looked like it was the same type of deployment method being used from initial access on. We were able to stop that before it even was implemented or executed on our client side of the house to save them that heartache and struggle with the malware. So those are kind of, how the cyber research unit, which is the team I'm a part of, is implementing and developing ways to protect our clients.
All included with Critical Start's managed detection and response service, although we do have a new premium threat intel offering that we're working on coming out right now. Guys, keep the questions coming in the chat. I'll try to get through them, and I'm writing down the ones that I can't get through. I want to make sure we get through all the different trends and stuff. But if we have time at the end, I'm just going to start rattling these questions off at Sarah or answering some of them myself around lateral movement TTPs, controls for identity, targeting of U.S. infrastructure and school systems, third-party risk, and the like. So you guys can keep them coming or fire them into the QA section of the chat up in the top right. You'll see it right next to chat messages, poll, Q&A. And we'll try to get through as many of these as possible. So I am writing these down, but I want to make sure we get through all of the content first. So
Randy, sorry, some of that content is covered in the articles that relate to this webinar and will be posted afterwards as well. So if we're not able to get to some of those, I do talk about some of those specifically in the articles that follow this webinar.
Yeah, so great point, Sarah. So everything that we're going through with recap and trends and what to expect in 2024, Sarah's actually got an article about each one of these trends coming out. And then we can likely grab all of the questions that are coming through in the chat and do like a follow-up Q&A article. I know Threat Intel always gets a ton of attention. Very interesting stuff. Now, Sarah, you mentioned kind of the ease of launching cyber attacks, and I want to dive into some of the things that are driving that. But first, we have another poll question, right? Yeah. So, what was the biggest cyber threat your organization faced this year? And I know there was a question from Cynthia about where you actually submit these polls. If you look up top, the chat messages poll, click on poll, click on open. You can check on that. Phishing attacks targeting employees, 100%. Yep. Ransomware incidents, absolutely. APTs, yep. It looks like most of it. Wow, 26 votes for phishing attacks. Now, let me tell you, I'll answer this one real quick because I saw a question going through the chat talking about different email controls and how do you stop all this stuff. There's a lot of best practices around email security, including user awareness education. I know it seems like a tireless and endless task to try to educate the users on not clicking literally everything, and they do anyways. But it's like the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. So never stop trying to educate the users. I've seen tremendous success with viral posters put throughout, and if you're an on-site organization. I saw one. I remember I was touring a university, helping them out, and they had one that said, every time you open a phishing email, a baby seal gets clubbed. I thought that was hilarious. It was definitely memorable. And I still think about that every time I see a phishing email. So little things like that can go viral. If you're looking for technical controls, I mean, obviously DKIM, DMARC, SPF, really important to implement. There are some newer technologies that are out. So you can use your traditional Mimecast, Proofpoint, Microsoft, make sure the configurations are good. And then there's newer technologies like SlashNext, Abnormal that are doing great work on the BEC side of things. So continue to submit answers for that. And we will move on end user awareness education, any trends around critical vulnerabilities being targeted by APT groups. Okay, perfect. Wow, this winner gets a big Harry and David gift basket, which is always fun to have. Now let's talk about malware as a service. So we've seen ransomware as a service that's evolving into malware as a service, really lowering the bar to allow any script kiddie to start making substantial amounts of money by ransoming critical infrastructure organizations. Sarah, what did we see in 2023 that really pushed that forward, and what are we expecting that to turn into in 2024?
Yeah, well, with the rise of cybercrime, I mean, they need access to their toolkit, right? So that's really where malware as a service comes in. It's the full toolkit for them to utilize. We've seen this driving cybercrime activity essentially and changing because of the massive increase of malware and tools available. It has really lowered the cost overall for cyber criminals. So we saw malware being essentially costing $10 for some cyber criminals to use, depending on what it was. So we've seen an increase in ransomware, banking trojans, spyware, as well as some like versatile options of make your own custom malware. So essentially, these services are offering their clients, the cyber criminals, to tell them what they need, and then they'll tweak the code accordingly. It's becoming very versatile. So that's also included with the coding. So we're seeing the transition of malware being switched from some of the baseline coding and put into Rust and Go. And this is because Rust and Go is a lot harder for the detection capability on our customer end to be able to tell when malware is being deployed on a system or trying to be initiated on a system with those languages. Some of the malware, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about these malware, Quackbot, Soglosh, Raspberry Robin. They're actually the three most adaptable malware loaders that we've seen utilized for 2023. So QBot is really, they added 15 new servers in order to allow for more cyber criminals to access their their malware package as a whole, which has really driven the use of it. Sogolosh operators are using watering hole attacks, and so these have been really been effective for them, and it's an easy thing for cyber criminals to use. So the Sogolosh has really been a primary malware loader. And then the Raspberry Robin, it's primarily utilized by Clop, Lockbit, TrueBot, some of the top cyber criminal groups out there. So we're seeing this trend of rapidly adaptable malware. So Lockbit is now on version 3.0. So these malware as a service criminals are quickly updating their malware and making it adaptable for individuals, cyber criminals to buy, which is really making it more prolific across the cyber criminal organization.
Now, Sarah, you mentioned Rust and Go as being a little bit more difficult to detect. Are there any tips, any policies, anything that people can put in place to either stop those scripts from running or detect them a little bit better, or are we kind of at the mercy of EPP and EDR?
EPP and EDR are the primary ones as far as effectiveness. It's really difficult to try to check some of those because they're blending in with the actual traffic that the system would be expecting to see. So that is the challenge with those languages in general. And then additionally, the fact that the languages are scripted to run on different OS systems makes it also complicated. So you have the increased programming language of Rust and Go, and then you also have the operating system. Typically, the operating system would help us depict if it was traffic that we anticipated or not based off of how one pathway works versus another pathway. But we've seen the transition to Linux targeting for Windows OS systems targeting. So the malware is now being written to run and check the OS operating system before initiating any actual malware on the system. It's just an initial go check. So if it doesn't receive a certain green light, it won't go past this step. And it also, with the Linux, it essentially develops the tree pattern where it goes to the operating system. It checks, is this Linux or is this Windows operating system, green light or red light, and then it creates the branch off from there for the next code script to run. So detecting, our goal is always to detect at the quickest initial entry point possible in order to minimize damage. So getting to that level of detail and granularity is more difficult with these types of malware.
Excellent. Let's, for the sake of time, let's kind of keep moving forward. I can see the Q&A filling up, and I love it. I want to get to a lot of these questions. So let's go on to the next topic. But first, I believe there is another poll. Look at that. Go to the poll tab up top. What is your organization doing to keep up with the evolution of malware as a service? So I see some folks are using Defender. I mean, EPP and EDR solutions are going to be kind of a gimme. Folks talking about user awareness education, which is great. Love that. Regularly do updating and patching software to address vulnerabilities. Sarah, one of the questions earlier that we had, maybe you can answer real quick, is are APT groups using any different vulnerabilities or any specific vulnerabilities, or is everybody kind of using the same vulnerabilities because they're so quick to develop exploit code for?
Oh, wow. So I will say that it's harder for us to distinguish what vulnerabilities APT users are actually utilizing. And we typically find out after the fact, right? Because they have the resources and the funding in order to kind of look at that vulnerability or find a vulnerability before it's public knowledge. So the vulnerabilities that we do have access to is pretty much public knowledge vulnerabilities with those CVEs. As far as not necessarily stating what a vulnerability number is, we do see that cloud is largely gone after as far as like a generalized vulnerability. And then with that, it's a lot of the business communication systems that are used, such as Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Drive. Any of like those collaborative platforms are largely utilized by APT threat actors as well.
Yep, we're seeing that quite a bit, and that kind of leads us into our next question after we see what the prize is going to be for this poll. What's the prize for this one? Oh, the Solo Stove. Let me tell you, if you won the Solo Stove, get the cooktop for it, the grill, the little griddle thing that you can attach to it. Man, that is my favorite. Who got that? Edward Buster. Congratulations. Man, it is the best way to cook steak. I tell you what, it is a lot of fun. Yeah, 24/7 monitoring. If anybody needs an MDR, let us know. We know of a good one. Sarah, now you talked about a lot of the vulnerabilities targeting the cloud. So let's go on to our next topic. Cloud definitely being used for kind of everything from malware hosting to C2 beaconing. What were some of the bigger trends in 23, and how should we expect to see those evolve in 24?
Yeah, so we're seeing cloud being used for malicious trafficking, and what they're doing is they're masquerading within the cloud, as well as using obfuscated files and the utilization of memory resident malware. So they're using RAMs in order to put the malware on in order to avoid the detection. One of the campaigns that was utilized was called head crab campaigns in 2023. It showcased the limitations of relying solely on agentless defenses. And so what we're seeing is they were able to evasively maneuver throughout the system based off of agent-based runtime security manipulation. Additionally, we have seen the abuse of Pastebin, which is a cloud storage, Google Drive, and then Dropbox. We saw abused services. As far as the messaging apps that we noted some cloud issues with was Telegram and Discord. As I previously mentioned, though, we did see vulnerability and malicious trafficking with Microsoft Teams with the file transfer, the malicious files outside your organization. Microsoft Teams did fix that if you lock down your system appropriately. Skype and then Slack were also utilized commonly in order to transfer malicious files within 2023. So they're really going out of the heart of the company and organization and trying to get to that proprietary information. So they are utilizing these cloud services, as like 94% of organizations and enterprises have shifted to cloud. So this is just the main platform and landscape that cyber criminals have to evolve to in order to get those information and sensitive data from their victims.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these attackers are just kind of hiding in plain sight. I mean, you mentioned the live off the land binaries using Microsoft local applications to do malicious things. And that is, I'll do a shameless plug for Critical Start. When we're resolving every single alert, regardless of criticality, we tend to find those things quite a bit. Other MDRs have to wait until PowerShell necessitates some level of investigation due to inherent malicious commands. We just look at all PowerShell, easy enough to do. So there are some defenses against those live off the land binaries, but you kind of have to have the ability to look at every single alert, regardless of criticality. And that's where the MDR comes in making sure your MDR is resolving every alert, not arbitrarily accepting risk. The other thing that I see kind of going through the chat, and you mentioned, Sarah, leveraging a lot of enterprise collaboration applications for attack, for exfiltration, for just finding data. There are some security companies that are starting to specialize in both web and agent-based collaboration apps. So looking at LinkedIn, Facebook, I mean, executives are starting to get targeted on both of those platforms. I've seen that quite a bit. There are companies like SlashNext. I know they do both web and Slack and Teams security, and some of the other email security platforms are starting to branch into it. But SlashNext, I know, has been doing that for quite a while, as well as mobile. a big uptick in smishing. So it's really however the attacker can go after it. I mean, they're looking for channels that are regularly used by executives that they want to target. Let's go on to another poll question. Sorry, I'm just reading through some of the chats while we're doing this. Yeah. So how are you combating malicious traffic concealment within the cloud? Yeah, a lot more attacks on mobile lately. I agree with that. I mean, I get them every day. I get smishing attempts. Hey, Randy, are you in the office? I need some iTunes gift cards. Love, Rob. I'm like, Rob doesn't text me about iTunes gift cards. All right, let's see. How are people combating malicious traffic concealment in the cloud? So far, 4, 4, and 4 for the top 3. Regularly updating and enhancing encryption protocols. Yep. Utilizing advanced threat detection systems to identify and block malicious traffic. Sure. Implementing multi-method defense strategies to address evolving concealment techniques. Yeah. Oh, look at this one catching up. Implementing strict access controls and authentication measures to cloud platforms. I see a lot more consolidation of authentication into SSOs, enforcing all off through that. Oh, somebody just unvoted. That's interesting. Advanced threat detection systems to identify and block malicious traffic. Yep. All the standards. It looks like that one's winning out. Cool. We'll move on. Yep. SAML's a big one. What's on our roadmap for 2024? We can definitely answer that one later. CS roadmap. And we're not ignoring the QA tab. I'm just trying to get through the rest of the content, and then we can spend more time on Q&A. So I'm trying to answer the ones that kind of make sense to fit in, and we'll pick it up after that. So this raffle is for the Reserve Decanter and Double Old Fashioned glasses. Looks like Bernard Wildgrover. Congratulations. I hope you like whiskey. Now we'll move on to the next topic. This one's obviously very relevant with the attack on Israel from Hamas, and with I think we're going on year 2 of Russia versus Ukraine saga. A lot of geopolitical factors influencing where cybersecurity is going. Less about attackers hiding behind it or going after organizations that support either of the wars on either side. How are these geopolitical tensions really shaping security, not just contributing to a tactical initiatives?
Yeah, so the shaping overall is because we are seeing a large trend of just exploitation of the conflict in general. So we're seeing that for trend analysis that cyber is more dominant as well, more than like kinetic operations. And we largely think in relation to this that that is military operations, right? But this isn't in reference to military operations. It's in reference to just companies within the region, or companies that have third-party facilities within the regions or suppliers within the region. We're noticing that there are just opportunities for attacks because cyber criminals want to take advantage of learning their trade craft, or they're just trying to implement new malware or develop malware. Or gain some footing or credibility within the landscape as a whole. We also have seen that it has changed from, just exfiltration of data to sometimes, and primarily within Israel-Hamas campaign, we've seen destructive attacks. So they're just trying to destroy as much information as possible in order to make it as painful as possible for the business and organization to get their feet under them again. We're also seeing involvement of non-traditional actors, which is the cybercriminal groups, the vast expansion of them, and then of data weaponization and espionage. And again, that probably sounds military related, but it's not. What I mean with that is that we're seeing that as a whole, countries have shifted from wanting to kind of turn a blind eye to ransomware operations and paying ransomware to we are highly encouraging companies not to pay ransomware, because the ability that, you're not going to be ransomed again or taken advantage of or have to repay will most likely be the case rather than you actually getting your information back and protecting your customers overall, right? So with that said, cyber criminals are trying to look for ways to, get that financial payout if we're not going to pay ransomware. So how are they going to do it? How are they going to, name and shame a company into giving them something if they're not going to pay the ransom? So we're looking at like data weaponization and that aspect of the game. And then that goes into the espionage, where they're just going to sell your information to whoever they can in order to get the gain, because they already conducted the attack and they know they're not getting any money from you. So who's going to be the highest bidder on the dark net with paying for that information that belong to your customers and your business as a whole? So that's what I mean with data weaponization and espionage as a trend that we're overall seeing. With that, APT groups as a whole per country have largely been very segmented and siloed. They have very specific role within that country of what malware they use, how they operate with TTPs, or what industries they target. That's not the case anymore. COVID really ushered in this new era of collaboration, not only for cyber criminals, but for APT groups, because states / countries had to figure out how to do the most damage or maintain even maintenance with monitoring systems with limited resources, whether that was money or manning due to illness. So what we have seen across all APT groups within their countries is that they are starting to collaborate more, which makes them a very lethal threat. One, we really don't know attribution wise anymore who's using what malware. They still have a little bit of unique fingerprint to them for APT use, but more so as far as like country, of what country that attack came from, most likely, versus what APT group that attack came from, as they're sharing their knowledge sets, their target sets, and their malware in general. So we have seen that shift in the community.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you made the allusion to cyber criminals being involved in kind of the geopolitical issues. I mean, watch for red herrings. Completely not abnormal for nation states to use the cyber criminals as almost a cover and distraction. The other big thing, I mean, you talk about the collaboration of different nation states and attack groups. I mean, there was the cyber attack on the monitoring systems of Israel that led Hamas to be able to bypass the physical defenses. So, Sarah, what do you think in terms of, and this is always a controversial topic, so feel free to defer, where do we start to see the lines blur between cyber and kinetic warfare? I mean, I've been looking at that over the last 5 years. I'm kind of shocked it hasn't led to an arms conflict already, but where do we start to see those lines blurring now?
Yes. So it's not well established on, what kind of cyber attack will garner a certain reaction as far as each country. And that's where we're seeing, those norms change overall within the cyber domain. So we are seeing more that attribution and publicly naming have been a deterrent strategy previously with the US, as well as economic sanctions and counter cyber operations. But we know, based off of the Ukraine and Russia war, that hasn't necessarily been as effective as it should be. And that's where, the US and Europe have really tried to collaborate on how to, better go about it as a nation. I don't know that we're there yet. The best thing we can do from business standpoint, is making sure that we're implementing strong defenses, that we're doing things in an ethical manner in order to protect the privacy of our customers, making sure we're doing those security audits as far as like cyber norms and deterrence goes for APT groups. But APT actors are becoming more open to the type of business that they attack within an industry. And we think critical infrastructure, like transportation, oil and gas, healthcare. But really, if you look at the critical infrastructure, it amounts to 17 different industries. And I'm pretty sure anyone could tie themselves back to some form of critical infrastructure or relying on critical infrastructure. And so we kind of forget that APTs can impact some of those different organizations or businesses based off of how they're tied together with their supply chain and third-party reliances.
Quick question from the chat. This one was asked a while ago, but I think it pertains right here. What are global agencies doing? So are there any partnerships between different nations? You talked about how the US is collaborating with the EU. Is there an overarching kind of authority that's directing cyber operations to counteract some of these kind of terrorist groups?
So Europe as a whole is kind of approaching it together, trying to establish cyber norms. There is a United Nations, GGE, and they proposed a set of norms for responsible state behavior in cyberspace. I think kind of the better question to that is that, or reply, I guess, is that there are organizations that are trying to establish norms, policies in order to help overall. But the problem is the repercussion side of it. While we are all banding together and we're all saying that we agree on the norms, deterrence, the sanctions, sanctions are really limited in their effect against an APT group. And that's just because the criminal organization with their financial structure is so diverse that those monetary assets can flow very freely or be transferred easily or quickly. That we don't necessarily have the ability as a legal entity to impact them as much as we need to in order to deter and stop them.
Yep. Thanks a lot, cryptocurrency. Really fun for speculation, really bad for cyber criminals. I mean, it did allow them to kind of turn all of that ransomware into untraceable funds that can now go to fund their additional cyber attacks. So if you ever wonder how they're passing money so easily, look no further than Bitcoin and the like, or Monero, I guess, is probably the currency of choice. We'll move on from the nation state and geopolitical discussion after another poll question. Just giving stuff away today. Happy holidays. How are you safeguarding your organization's cybersecurity amid the geopolitical unrest, especially if you're critical infrastructure? I know this is targeting you, and we've historically thought of Russia as being either monetarily oriented if it's going to be the cybercrime families, or destruction oriented if it's nation state and they're going after Ukraine supporters, whereas China has historically been more about the IP theft. Now we see Iran really getting into the fold, helping out Hamas with the attack against Israel. Turkey starting to get into the mix a little bit as well. How is your organization combating these sorts of attacks? Let me find the poll. Here it is. Looks like for the most part, it's increasing investment in advanced threat detection and response technologies. Hopefully MDR is part of that plan, not just a shameless plug, but truly 24/7. I mean, if you think about when the nation state actors are working, exact opposite hours as the United States, because they're on the exact opposite side of the world. Enhancing employee training programs, employee awareness training, just security awareness training in general. I know it's annoying and people don't like it, but there are some much better ones out there than what used to be. I mean, Mimecast, love them or hate the email product, Atata was by far the best educational product because it went viral. It was funny. People liked watching it. There's other ones out there as well, like Ninja. Wombat had some okay training. I saw Know4. They've kind of revamped their training. Everybody's starting to go like the SNL of security awareness training, where it's a little bit funny. It goes viral. People talk about it. That seems to really be catching on. And that, in addition to the advanced detection and response technology, seems to be the top two answers. Do we have a winner in here yet? I have a new MDR going in place. Thank you, Critical Start. All right. Thanks a lot, Shane. Appreciate that. We have a winner. Sonos Rome going to Nadu. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I did not, but congratulations on the Sonos Rome. I have a Sonos Rome. I have Sonos everywhere. If you don't have their stuff, go pick up their stuff. It is so easy to use. Music throughout your entire house. Fantastic. Let's move on to our last topic in the last 10 minutes here. And again, there will be articles that come out about each one of these. We can try to do a QA article as well. But moving on to this last one, everybody knew what it was going to be: AI and cyber threats. The gimme here is writing phishing emails. Fantastic. And there's a whole segments of cybersecurity being developed just for AI, and not only around DLP, but also in protecting the data that's training AI. So Sarah, from a threat perspective, what did we see in 2023? Really the rise of AI, and what are you expecting to see in 24?
Yes, so we definitely saw the rise of AI with the phishing campaigns within business email compromises. They are really looking legitimate. It is very hard to tell the difference between a fake email these days and one that is legitimate from your CEO. I know, Randy, you mentioned about the LinkedIn site with CEOs being targeted. Well, that was North Korean, two groups, Lazarus and Kimsuki. Both did the attacks, one through the business email compromise and one through LinkedIn social media. So it was very effective. They're very good at it. So that's definitely something that we will continue to see in 2024. Additionally, we've seen fraudulent AI bots distributing malware. So people are trying to get onto that wait list to get early access, or even to just get upgraded to the next level or tier within the AI capability. And they are being specifically targeted for these additional websites that look like they are legitimate AI websites, and people are clicking on them, and it is distributing the malware to their systems. And then if it is uploaded into their cloud document, it is just compounding the effect of the malware being distributed. We've also seen some legitimate applications being used for malicious sources. And we anticipate that is going to become more of a popular trend for 2024, the legitimate application use for nefarious activity. What I mean by that is, if any of you have heard of nightshade and data poisoning. So nightshade was originally developed for a positive thing. Like most things that we do, we try to develop something for good to help others out. This was developed for artists. So artists were wanting to make sure that their artwork was protected within the AI realm. So it generated images. It would make it so that if AI scraped the website for an image, it would detect the image as something completely different. So this is like based off of pixels and how the AI system is reading the data within the set. There is nothing to say that malicious actors couldn't take this concept and turn it around and utilize it to actually put malware within AI, where if the data was scraped from a website that is said to be a legitimate one, but there's something within the pixelation of it, or something that is written under an image, that the malware would be imported through the AI is a possibility. So that's something that we're keeping our eye on, of how that is going to be utilized. We've also anticipate that AI scraping, as far as threat actors getting access to credentials and logging in to someone's AI feed, and then scraping the feed, will be utilized, trying to find business information, sensitive information for an organization, or even further information about the individual for use later on with another login, or just interests in order to spam you with phishing emails. So that targeted advertising. Those are some of the things that we are definitely anticipating seeing with AI in this upcoming year. Let's see what else.
Had to find my my mute button there. Yeah, so we did launch the poll for AI, so make sure you take that poll. There's a number of different things in there, including like using ML for anomaly detection, which we've been doing for a few years, implementing some AI-based behavioral analytics. I do a lot of CISO roundtables. By and large, the number one question I get asked is how do we drive adoption or safe adoption of AI? There's really three methods. One is kind of the Thunderdome, like just allow all AI at all times. That one doesn't work. The second is, the cold turkey, just quit it all, block it at the source. That one's certainly not going to work because users just go home and they find a way to do it anyways. The approach that we adopted internally to Critical Start is educate and enable. So going through the different functional groups, talking about how they could use AI, what to watch out for, what not to submit into AI, and then just kind of monitor the approach. But there's certainly a lot of different technologies that will become available over the next year or two that will leverage some level of AI to do detections. Sarah, any feel on the innovation front as far as security tools leveraging AI goes? We've seen a number of AI-based assistants, whether it's Copilot or CrowdStrike and SentinelOne came out with their own personified AI. Have you seen any interesting security solutions leveraging AI?
I have not on my end, so I will bow out on that question. I will look into it some more and see if I can't provide a better answer in a write-up.
I think there's going to be some level of threat intel. I mean, dark web scraping just makes too much sense to integrate. I mean, we saw, what was it, BART AI or BART GPT that essentially learned all of the knowledge on the dark web, or at least as far as it could scrape on the dark web. So I think we're going to see a good guy version of the BART GPT, which will be interesting. Give AI access to your SIM. Oh, that sounds like an awful idea, giving AI access to a SIM. Let's also do our last poll question. Is that the next slide? I think it is. Maybe it's two slides. Oh, we have the Nespresso machine.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the final one. Let's go on to the key takeaways. The final one is just, do you want a demo? I think. So let's go to the key takeaways, back three. And Sarah, why don't you go ahead and kind of run through this list as a good recap?
Yeah, so just being aware of cyber criminals and the use of the ATP and how it's going to potentially impact your organization going forward is going to be much more at risk. Mass is also driving a lot of activity as far as the services go. Traditionally, we're seeing that Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are the prime cyber attack for cyber criminals for those days. And then Fridays and Saturday evenings is ransomware attacks. So mass, I think we're going to continue to see that with the cyber criminals kind of all in one. And then for the malicious actors increasing their attacks on cloud storages, we definitely are going to see an increase of that malicious activity and how they're able to try to get around any detections in there. So that's what we'll be looking at on our end for Critical Start. The geopolitical environment, while we commonly think it is just going to be, political and military, does impact businesses of all industries. And then AI, with that exploitation, be aware, educate your individuals of how to use AI appropriately as far as what information they put into their AI platforms for generation, and then also for falling prey to some of the AI scams out there with legitimate looking emails or websites for clicking on.
So all in all, pretty bleak. Hope you guys are ready for 2024. As it has been for the last 10 years, our jobs are not going to get any easier. But we definitely appreciate the information, Sarah. Thanks for letting us know what to look forward to in 2024. One last poll question before everybody signs off, and this one is for the $500 Amazon gift card. Do you want a demo? We sure hope so. If you do want to learn more about Critical Start, please reach out. I know there was a handful of questions about roadmap. Happy to share all of that, talking about our managed cyber risk reduction that we unveiled at Black Hat. That is starting to roll out and go production. We have the assessment module that's live, as well as our asset inventory piece, identifying those machines that are not protected by EDR and EPP. So do reach out. We'd be happy to show you our solution and talk more in depth. And also watch out for Sarah's blogs and white papers that are coming out on the threats that we discussed on this webinar. And we'll also try to do some level of Q&A blog post as well, so you guys can get answers to those many, many questions that you put in the chat. So thanks for the participation. Thanks for tuning in. Hope this was valuable. Sarah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing the knowledge with us.
Anytime.
Everyone have a great holiday, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys in 2024.
Thanks, everyone.